All right, our quote of the day: kindness is spreading sunshine into other people's lives, regardless of the weather. The author of that lovely quote is unknown to us, but I like what the quote represents for us in terms of this discussion that we're going to have today about nice girls finishing last. And really, the title, I feel like our title of our episode is a little misleading for how we're gonna dive into this. So, lady, if you looked at the title and you're listening based on the title, buckle up because we got something slightly different for you today. So, T, going back to our quote of the day, kindness is spreading sunshine into other people's lives regardless of the weather.
I'm just thinking, I'm like, I guess, you know what? I always saw kindness and being nice as one and the same. But after we did a little research, a little digging for our episode, and just kind of having personal experiences, I think that for me, this quote means that when you're kind, it's irrespective of how other people are treating you. It's just your vibe, your energy, the joy and the good vibes that you exude without wanting anything in return. And so that's when I hear this quote, that's what I think about now.
Yeah, me too. Me
Yeah,
too. Like it makes me really think of like the conversation that we're going to dive into, and like makes me excited about being able to really dive into this conversation, because I think that there's a lot of us out there who have one perception of what niceness is, and it might not be accurate. It might not be
hmm,
a realistic reflection of who you are or who you want to be.
there you go. I think you hit the nail on the head, Dom. We found so many good articles that
Yes.
really dove into this topic. And I don't know about you, Dom, but there was one Inc. article, which we can add in the show notes, lady. And there's a philosophy PhD student named Kelly Shee, and she was trying to just untangle the distinction between the two, right? Kindness versus
Yes.
niceness. And one thing that she shared here in the article, I'm just going to read it off because I think it's really powerful. It says, for example, is holding the door for someone nice or kind? Well, it depends on why you do it. If the underlying motivation is to create a favorable impression for the purpose of asking for a favor later, then the action can be considered nice due to its pleasing effect, but not kind without a sense of benevolence. Conversely, if the motivation is to spare the other person from extra effort or inconvenience, then the action can be considered kind, as well as nice if it pleases the other person, she writes. And I'm like, oh, that's really good because it sounds like this has a lot to do with your internal motivator and not necessarily
Yes.
and your integrity, right? Not
Right.
necessarily what other people will know, because I can be nice all day and people are like, oh my gosh, she's so kind. But on the inside, I'm like, well, I'm just doing this shit because I want you to do something for me later. You know what I mean? So I
Right.
think this is all about how we can also boost our personal integrity as we move about in the world. But I thought that was a really powerful distinction there.
Yes, I did too, because I think that the thing that also came up for me in thinking about what it means to be nice is that it might not necessarily be that I'm holding the door for you because I'm expecting something in return. It might be that I'm holding the door for you because I don't want you to dislike me, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't want you to say anything bad or negative about me because I didn't hold the door for you, right?
Hmm.
So, like, I think it still goes back to that internal motivation, but the so that's the underlying thing, is the internal motivation, but it can show up in different ways, right? Like the motivator may be different.
For sure. And that makes me think about another example where sometimes you might hold the door open because you just think it's the right thing to do. You're like, I'm just going to hold the door open for this elderly person. Or maybe it's, typically I hear men say, oh, there's a woman coming, I'm going to open the door. I open the door for whoever might be coming behind me if I'm able to, right? Or
Mhm.
lady, let's talk about holding that elevator door open. That's
Oh,
where the petty, that's
oh,
where the
that's where
petty
the
really
petty comes
begins,
out.
okay?
Yes, it
That's where the
does.
petty starts, okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we won't even have to go into that. But anyway, Dom, have you have you I thought of a story and I was like, you know what, let me stop. Have you seen yourself kind of move into sort of like straddle the, I guess, the fence on being kind and nice in your life?
Yeah, like as we were preparing for this episode, it made me really pause and reflect and think about how I have generally been described as nice,
Mhm.
right? And when I step back and think about why people might describe me as nice versus kind,
Mhm.
for me, it has a lot to do with, a recovering people pleaser. And so I think about in the past, in the height of my people pleasing, it
Yes.
it was really that niceness. People would describe me as nice because I constantly gave them what they wanted, right?
Mhm.
So I was the person that if it's a group of us trying to decide on where we're going to go, it's my response is, well, I'll go wherever you want to go, right? And then the perception is, oh, well, Dr. Dom is nice because she allows us to make the decision on where
Mhm.
we go. When in reality, what that means is that I'm not putting my opinion out there, right? I'm not putting my wants and needs out there. And so, of course, if you're the other person and I'm giving you everything that you want, yes, I'm
Mm.
going to be nice. You're going to
Right?
consider me to be nice, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I made it easy for you.
Yeah.
And so now, as a recovering people pleaser, I think my intention now is to be kind.
Mhm. Question. Do you think you can still be kind and have that same answer or response? Like if you're like, I'm such a flexible person. I really don't care where we go for dinner, but maybe there's another case or another opportunity in your life where you're advocating and setting boundaries. Like, is there a world where you say this, you have the exact same response and you're being kind, in your opinion?
Hmm. Yes,
I think so too.
I think so. I think that
Yeah.
the key is that, okay, so generally, maybe I am a flexible person and I want to go, I don't really have a preference on where we're going for dinner, right?
Hmm.
But really, am I that flexible that I never have a preference on where we
Hmm.
go? Like never? Never ever? I don't know. I think that every now and then I would, right? And so I think like when we try to parse out those differences, like that kind person is the person who's going to say, okay, T, we're going out to dinner. You were just, as we're planning dinner, you were just telling me how you had a really rough day. And so me being kind is going to say, where do you want to go for dinner?
Hmm.
Because I'm thinking about how you had a rough day and maybe you have a place in mind, like something that's going to feel a restaurant that's going to feel soothing for you, right?
Right.
So I'm going to say, we'll go where you want, right? But let's say that it's the reverse, right? That I'm the person who's having the bad day and we're trying to decide. And you say, well, I'm really feeling going to this Thai spot tonight. And I'm having a bad day and I'm like, T, I know you're really feeling a Thai spot, but like what would really help me in coming down from my bad day is if we went to this Mexican spot.
Hmm.
And so that's me being kind, right? Because I'm acknowledging what you want, but I'm also stating that I have a need as well.
Right. That makes sense. I've definitely used these words interchangeably, so I can't wait to dive in deeper. Now, lady, before we dig in deeper, you should think about like where you think you reside most often. We know you reside where the money reside, right?
Yes, got
We
to.
all we all where we all where the money reside. But in the context of this situation,
Yes.
this conversation, are you more so nice most of the time, or are you kind? And then, Dom, let's talk about what you're excited about in life right now, and then let's dive in deeper into this conversation and why it's important for us to even have this conversation around being nice versus being kind, because this is very important, lady. You may not realize it, but this is very serious and it's important. Okay, so we got to dive in deeper. So, what
Yes.
are you excited about these days, Dom?
Honestly, I'm excited about us trying out Green Room, right?
Hmm.
Like, it's a new app from Spotify, and it's a space where we can get on, and you and I can engage in conversation with the folks who are listening to us.
Yes.
And I know, lady, as you're listening, particularly our listeners who have been rocking with us from like early on, and they said, when we how can we connect? Like, we want to talk to y'all. Like, this is a great opportunity for y'all to do so. We're doing this every Friday at 1:30 Pacific time, 4:30 East Coast time. And you know, I'm excited to like just dive have those moments of like real authentic, like in the moment conversation with folks. What about you, T? What are you
Yes.
excited about?
I'm definitely excited about that too, because there's something about just being live in the virtual room with folks and being able to see the feedback. I think the other thing that I'm really excited for now is the fact that we have so many dreams and goals, lady, for the podcast, but as you know, we are two busy working women, and so life is busy. Like we're just like bootstrapping with this podcast, and we've been learning as we go along. But we are releasing video content on our Patreon page for our main episodes, which are usually between, I don't know, 25 to 45 minutes long, and then also for the after show. So after we record the main show, then we kind of let our hair down. Things might get a little ratchet, right? They might get a little real. You might see
Yes.
some stuff that you may not see on our platform. And we have the after show where we kind of debrief and talk about the show. Oh, got a little noise coming up. All right. We got real life popping off here, Dom.
Yes.
So I think I may have to take on mommy duties at the moment as we record.
Yes. Hi, baby Z.
Yes. All right, lady. So, yeah, this is kind of stuff you'll see on the after show. You'll see the video footage of us navigating this life.
Yes. I think those are like, we got some great things happening. So I'm excited to see the direction we continue to go. So, but let's dive back in to our conversation about kindness versus niceness. So, T,
Hmm.
I shared a little bit about how I see myself fitting in there. What about you? Where do you see yourself, or what reflections can you think of?
To be honest, Dom, I think we have a lot in common and we have very similar personalities because I've been that person too, where people are like, "Oh, you're so nice." Like I had a manager one time tell me like, introducing me to someone, and she's like, "Oh, she's like the nicest person I've ever met," and I was like, "Okay, that's cool, I guess. But what the fuck does that mean? Like, what? What? Wait, why do you think I'm that nice? I want to make sure I'm like setting boundaries and all these things." And it's funny because I actually had to set a boundary with that same person, and I kind of wonder like, does she still think I'm nice after having set that boundary, right? But I would say same thing with me, Dom. However, the older I get, and honestly, after having a child, I feel a shift in me, like I'm getting
Hmm.
my big girl draws, like I'm moving
Yes.
from my, young girl panties to my big girl draws, and I feel like I'm starting to set more boundaries and just still being a kind person because I really do value, just other people's comfort in addition to my own, and just making sure that we're all just, living our best life. But I also am setting more boundaries, like setting boundaries more often than I was before. And so
Yeah.
I see myself shifting from being nice to being kind. The last thing I'll say about this before we move on to why this is important is that I used to really value the perception of other people and like how other people perceived me. So oftentimes when I was being nice, it was because I felt this pressure to sort of project positivity and exude positivity at all
Mhm.
costs, even if I didn't really feel that way. And so it was disingenuous.
Yeah.
So you might think I was being nice, but on the inside, I was like, I don't really want to do this shit. I didn't have a
Mhm.
good attitude about it. So I've noticed a shift overall because ideally I would love for my inner world to reflect my outer world and how I show up. So I'm trying to get more in alignment with that as much as possible.
I love that. I love that, and I think that that is something that all of us, right, are hopefully like striving towards, right? Like really figuring out how to be kind versus nice. And like I love the description that you gave about boundaries, right?
Hmm.
And the need to have those boundaries and not let people kind of walk over those boundaries for the sake of avoiding conflict, right?
Hmm.
Because I think that all of those are characteristics or things that can happen when you are nice versus kind, right?
Yeah.
That it's some of it is stemming from being a people pleaser, right? Some of it is stemming from lack of boundaries. Some of it is stemming from wanting to avoid conflict, right? Like I know that
Hmm.
that was something that I would do for like that was all tied in together of like being that
Yeah.
people pleaser and like being conflict avoidant, right?
Yeah.
That I didn't want to come across as a mean person, right?
Hmm.
Or I didn't want to be aggressive or not wanting to fit the angry black woman stereotype, right? Like all of
Hmm.
those things can play into why we might be nice versus being kind, right?
Yeah, that's spot on, Dom. And I think that, I mean, it's so important for us to have this conversation and to work on shifting because, like you said, when you're nice, a lot of times, I know in my experience, let me speak from personal experience, you get taken advantage of for sure, even by well intentioned people. And that shit builds up, like if you constantly being taken advantage of, or you notice that people are constantly over talking. Like I remember being on this one team and they would like I was just I was very timid, and so people are like, "Oh, she's so nice because you can have your way and do whatever the fuck you want, and I ain't gonna do shit." Like that's just who
Right.
I was at that time. I had to grow to a certain place, and when you do that, when people walk all over you long enough, it gets tiring. It wears you down, and then it's
Hmm.
like, damn, you might become bitter and not better, and then you might just start snapping on people. But it
Yes.
builds up in you, right? And that's not fun. It's not a good way to live, and you deserve to put your like they say put your mask on first. Like you deserve to set your boundaries and
Yes.
set the stage for how people treat you. And so I think that's why it's really important to move into kindness where you have good vibes, you're giving everyone good vibes, but the good vibes start with you.
Yes, yes, exactly. And I think like the thing that kept the word that kept popping up for me as you were describing that was authenticity,
Mhm.
right? That like if you were in that situation where people are taking advantage of you, where you're not setting your boundaries, then you it leads to you being resentful. It's you're lacking authenticity,
Yeah.
right? And when you're lacking authenticity, that leads for lots of other chaotic situations in your life as well, right? Because then
Yes.
people don't know how to really interact with you because you're not being your real self.
Can we zoom in on that real quick? Because that is the old we're all work in progress, ladies. So as you listen to this, know that we are also working on becoming our best selves constantly. But Dom,
Yes.
you just hit the nail on the motherfucking head. Okay. So girl, I I have a lot of empathy for people that don't know who they are and
Yeah.
how you can just meet someone and you can tell like, oh, this person is not very comfortable with themselves and they're still finding themselves. That was me, so I can spot it from a mile away. And
Mhm.
there's some instances where I'm still working on becoming more comfortable and developing in certain areas, but I remember a time where I really did not know who I was, and I was really just kinda like a chameleon tossed to and fro, like, if everyone in this group is happy, I'm gonna be happy, or if this is what everyone wants to do, I'm just gonna do that, and didn't really know how to stand up for myself and set those boundaries. And now, although I have empathy for those people, because that person is me, that was me, it
Mhm.
also makes me a little nervous being around someone that does not state how they feel, because now it's like, well, wait, how do you really feel, right? Because
Right.
I you're giving me one thing, but I'm a little nervous because I'm not sure, like, are you really comfortable? Like, do you have other thoughts? So I think it does a disservice to the people that we work with and the people we're around when we aren't honest, because now might be a little insecure, like, well, I know what you're showing me. Like, I see the mask, but
Right.
what's the real
What's the
real?
real
Like, what's
real?
really going on?
Yeah. I think
Yeah. Have
that's
you noticed that?
yeah, I think that that's important, right? To like think about like the impact that it has when you aren't honest with yourself or with other people, because it all ties back, it all ties in, right? So it looks like them maybe taking advantage of you later on down the line because you're not being honest with them about how you're feeling. So they're like, hey, so we are, we have this big project coming up and we need 5 people to work on it. And so, Terry, you want to be on that project? And you say, yeah, even though you know your capacity is at its max, or you just you're not interested in that project, right?
Hmm.
And you say, sure, I'll do it because you're trying to be nice. And then now you're working on this project and you're exhausted because you're over capacity. Or you might start saying some, I don't know, some foul shit to folks because like you just start letting it slip, right?
Yeah.
Because you're burned out and you're resentful that you're on this project.
Hmm.
When really the kind thing would have been to say, thank you for considering me, but I'm not interested in being on this project right now.
That's a good point. I did think of another example, Dom,
Okay.
and it kind of relates to something that we have talked about behind the scenes, but I don't want
Mhm.
to give too much detail because it's not something that we want to give a lot of detail about. But I think it's a really important example because I think this is real life and this is what some of us deal with. Now, just wink at me if you
Okay.
catch my drift on like where I'm going and what I'm talking about. Now, okay, lady, let's say that you have a situation where there's a person at work, and this person at work, you all are in a situation where you have to choose a partner for a project that you're working on at work. And this person comes to you, but you're not really feeling this person. And you're like, yo, I don't really care for this person, but I know that this person is either a superior or they're like really close with the managers. And
Mhm.
so you're like, career wise and like politically, it would be
Mhm.
wise for me, you got me, to work with this person. But you're like, yo, I really don't feel this person. I feel like there are many situations in life that we face where it would be in our best interest for either career development or for growth or just politically to, play the game, air quotes,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So I'm just curious. There's no right or wrong answer for this, but like Don, what is your perspective on those type of situations? Because I have a thought in mind, but I want to hear what you think about that kind of situation.
So I think in those types of situations, it's it becomes more complex and nuanced. And so you want to take a step back and think about what's authentic to you, right?
Hmm.
And so it's political, right? Like it could have some future implications for your job, right?
Yeah.
So there's one piece of it that's, well, how much does this particular project mean to you, right? How much does
Yes.
how important is having this connection, right? And so then it really becomes a question of evaluating values.
Hmm.
So in this particular situation, which value is more important right now, right? And then if we're going to respond from a space of kindness, then we will tap into, we will think about what is going to be empathic and take into account everybody's positionality in that moment. And so, it may look like, depending on where my values fall, it may look like me saying, I know that this could have detrimental effects to me politically, but right now in this moment, I don't feel comfortable working with this particular person, right? Or it could look like me saying, politically, I really need this. And as much as I don't want to work with this person, politically, that's what's more important to me right now. And so if I approach it from a kindness perspective, then I allow myself to honor how I'm feeling. And then I speak with the person that I don't really want to work with around, like, what are some boundaries that would make it comfortable for me to work with them? What are
I
your thoughts?
love I love that answer. I think you are spot on. And I think it's situational. And I think, like you said, it really, I love that you talked about just kind of sitting with yourself and being self-aware, right? And feeling your
Mhm.
own feelings and like analyzing, okay, how do I feel about the situation? What do I value? Like I love that it's like lady, this is not cookie cutter stuff. Like that's why I'm so
Right.
glad that Dom shared in that way because it really is situational. And also I think it's about being strategic, right?
Yes,
Being
sometimes
strategic
we
for
gotta
yourself. So
be.
I
Mhm.
sometimes we have to be, right? And again, it goes back to what you value. Sometimes, like I'm just saying, for example, if you're like a billionaire and you don't have to work with that person, your career is set and you don't need it, you're like, yo, I don't value that right now. It may not be the right option for you, right? But if you're in a different position, it might be. So I love that you pointed that out, Dom. And I think that gives us a great segue right into our strategies for being nice. Or I'm sorry, not being nice, y'all. My bad. Our strategies for being kind, and the first will be being self-aware.
Yes. Yes. I mean, I think that the example that we just talked through gave a really good illustration of what self-awareness looks like, right? So stepping back and really getting into yourself around and identifying what are the thoughts and feelings that are coming up in this situation, and what do you really need and want in this moment. So then that takes us to our next strategy, which is to focus on authenticity. And we talked about this already throughout the episode of, like, really just being real with yourself, right? When I think about authenticity, I think about this. Okay, I already know what I'm about to say is going to ruffle some feathers, and people might come for me in the comments. And I'm okay with that because we're focused on authenticity. So, T, when people ask you, how are you?
Ooh,
Mm,
yeah.
people passing in the street walk by you, they say, hi, how you doing? Or hi, how are you?
Hmm.
What's the expectation in that conversation?
Oh, the expectation in most cases is, lay down and be real with you, is keep that shit short and simple to the point. Don't tell me all about what the fuck you're going through. I don't have time or the energy to take that in. Tell me you're doing good and let's keep it pushing. Like, don't nobody want to hear all that. Honestly, when I ask people though, I really do want to hear all that. Like, I'm that person.
And that's
I do.
kindness. That
Oh, okay.
is kindness.
I was gonna say, like, I really do want to, like, tell me, like, let's sit down and have a conversation. Like, what's going on? No, but most people, they're just like,
It's in
and if you
passing.
start to and if you start to tell them about what you're going through, they'll be looking like, "Bitch, I don't care about all
Right,
that."
right.
Yes.
Like, I know I see it a lot in the South, right? And in other places
Oh,
too, but definitely in the
yeah,
South, where you pass everybody on the street, doesn't matter if you know them or not. Hey, how
yeah,
you doing? I'm fine, or I'm blessed, and then you
yeah.
keep going, right?
Yeah, and part of me is like, Dom, is it realistic to like have a conversation in depth about what you're going
Nope.
through? And do you want to tell people your business? No. But
No.
culturally, it is kind of a weird expectation that we have to like, why even ask the question socially if we're not going to be real about it, I guess. That doesn't true.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
I've tried to start paying attention to that, to do like you do, right? Like if I'm asking, how are you doing? Then if I'm the one initiating it, right? Then I'm trying to be more authentic around, I'm asking because I truly want to know. Like I want beyond the I'm okay or I'm fine. Like I want to know like what's the latest and greatest, right? And so that's the thing with kindness though. It's about really being authentic. So not asking someone, you know, how are you doing when you don't really want to know, right?
Wait, I just thought of another one, Dom. Or like when you ask your partner, let's say you got a yummy cheesecake or some really yummy cookies, and you're like, "You want some of this?" And you be like, "Yo, you better not say yes.
I knew
You
it.
better
I
not say
knew
yes."
that was
I
the
thought about
question.
that.
Yes, exactly. Don't offer it if you don't really want to share it, right? Yeah. Be authentic.
The next one, which we've talked about all episode, is to set boundaries.
Yes, set those boundaries. You know how to do this. And if you're still unsure, we have an episode on how to set boundaries and what to do if you violate someone else's boundaries or they violate yours. All right. Our final tip: navigate conflict constructively. I think this one goes to that conflict avoidant person, right? So if we are operating from a space of kindness, we step into the conflict, right? And we act assertively. We don't act aggressively. We don't act passive. We are willing to hear what the other person wants, and we are also willing to share what it is that we want. And we are also willing to acknowledge each person's feelings. So, just to recap, become self aware, focus on authenticity, set boundaries, and navigate conflict constructively.
And we do have an episode for that, for the conflict resolution one. So be sure to check that out. And lady, we got to let you know we have well over 100 episodes. So make sure you check the archives. We've talked about boundaries, imposter syndrome, infertility, polygamy, narcissist, and more. So you can literally just Google a keyword along with our podcast name, and that should help you find exactly what you're looking for. Now we are about to head on over to Patreon to record the after show. So we hope to see you there.